you are locked in to the deep dive. Today we are tackling, really diving deep into the Biden administration's the latest move in the space race.
Yeah, easing those export restrictions on space tech.
This is a big one. This isn't just about, cutting through some red tape.
Yeah.
This is about potentially shifting the balance of power in space.
Yeah.
And we've got some really interesting analyses that we're looking at today. And frankly, some of this stuff is straight out of a sci-fi novel.
It really is. And what's fascinating here is that this isn't just like a minor policy tweak, right? This is a calculated play by the administration that has some pretty significant implications for, American companies, for international alliances, and especially for this competition we're seeing play out with China.
So let's unpack that. The big news is that the U.S. is making it easier for companies like SpaceX, like Boeing,
Right.
to sell certain space technology to their allies.
Exactly.
But it's not just like, everything is on the table now, right?
Right. It's not a free-for-all. We're talking about specific satellite and spacecraft components. This isn't like, weapons systems or anything like that. But what they are doing is, one key change is they're relaxing the export controls on some really high-performance rocket engines. And, this is a field where the U.S. has a pretty, a significant edge, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
And sharing that technology could really give allied space programs a very serious boost.
So it's kind of like we're saying, before we would loan our neighbor a wrench,
Yeah.
and now it's like we're handing them the keys to a high-powered engine.
Exactly, yeah. And think about the potential impact on a program like SpaceX's Starship program, right?
Oh, wow.
They've been pushing hard for these changes, and this could allow them to, potentially test launches from allied countries,
Right.
and potentially even bypass, the current kind of restrictions they have on launching from U.S. soil. So imagine a Starship being prepped for a test flight, but instead of it happening in Florida, it's happening off the coast of Australia.
Okay, now that's a pretty wild image.
Yeah.
But let's talk strategy here a little bit, right? I mean, why is the U.S. suddenly feeling so generous with this incredibly valuable, space technology?
Right. Well, I think this move is as much about geopolitics as it is about economics, right? So strengthening those alliances with countries like Australia, like Canada, the UK, that's really crucial.
Especially now.
Especially now with, this new RUK's pact, which is obviously, aiming to counter China's influence, right?
Yeah.
So space is really becoming, the new frontier, I guess, in this strategic chess match.
So it's kind of like we're assembling a team, right? It's like almost like a group of spacefaring nations now.
Right, exactly.
And we're sharing resources,
Yeah.
we're sharing knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
All to counter this common rival,
Right.
But what about the economic side of things? I mean, you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, projections for the global space market. We're talking trillions, literally trillions of dollars in the coming decades. So by easing these restrictions, the U.S. is really aiming to secure a much larger slice of that pie.
Right.
And it's about empowering, American companies to compete on a global scale and really maintain that technological edge that they've cultivated, right? So yeah, I mean, over 40 countries stand to benefit from these these less stringent rules, mostly in Europe and Asia.
But and maybe this is, jumping ahead a little bit, but there are some key players who are noticeably absent from that list.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Russia, China, for example. I mean, this feels very deliberate, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, for sure. The exclusion of those countries is definitely a clear signal. This is part of the ongoing geopolitical maneuvering that we're seeing, right?
Yeah.
And it really sends, I think, a very clear message that cooperation in space, it's a privilege, right? It's not a right. And they're signaling.
I mean, it's been kind of brewing for a while, right? This isn't just some impulsive reaction to, to something that happened in recent events or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I vaguely remember reading something about this, a few years back.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. This has been in the works for years, actually. There was a proposal that was floated back in 2019.
Oh, wow.
And then more recently, there was, a pretty clear request from the National Space Council.
Okay.
Both of those things really paved the way for these changes. And let's not forget, I mean, Companies like SpaceX, they've been lobbying really hard for this, arguing that it will, help reduce bureaucracy, boost U.S. competitiveness.
So it really is this delicate balancing act.
It is.
You've got national security on the one hand, you've got the economy on the other, and then this larger goal of stowing ahead in this increasingly intense, I guess, space race, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. And that kind of leads us to, I think, a really crucial question, which is, will it be enough?
Yeah.
Will these changes actually be enough? Or is this just, the opening move, right, in what will probably be a much longer and much more complex game?
I think that's what I keep coming back to. It just feels like this turning point.
Yeah.
Where there is this recognition that the rules of the game are changing, and the U.S. has to adapt, has to evolve to maintain its leadership in space.
Mm-hmm.
And it really makes you wonder, what other areas of policy might we see impacted by this renewed focus on space?
Yeah, that's a great question. Lots to think about.
That's for sure. For the deep dive, I'm your host.
And I'm your expert. Thanks for listening.